Good morning. Well, these are pivotal days, aren't they? And, I hear all these different commentators and news people who gets this state and who gets that state and who's going to win here. And I think you're just speculating. I don't have time to sit and listen to people sit around and guess. Because the last presidential election, I don't know if anybody had a clue what was going on, but I do know God did, and we can trust Him. And with this the whole election thing, let me just say this: I believe, this nation was birthed by God. There is never, and I'm not the smartest historian. There are people a lot smarter than me who say the same thing. There's never been a nation built on the principles, the premise of liberty. And not that it was perfect. Of course, it's not. We should quit having to put that caveat in there. Everybody knows we're not perfect. Our founders weren't. None of our documents. The Bible is the only perfect book. But I believe God guided the hands of those people who wrote that Constitution and wrote the Bill of Rights and put this nation together. And what a privilege that we've had these 250 years or so. Almost unbelievable blessings on this land. God birthed this nation. He took frail humanity and He chose to do something here. I don't know why He chose to do it, but He did it. And I love that I was able to be a part of it. Maybe not the best part. I don't know. I kind of think we're in a pretty incredible era. Yes, there's sin, but there's always been sin. But I love the nation that God has birthed here, and He didn't make this country because we were so good. He didn't make this country because there's some, if any nation deserved to be totally blessed, it'd be Israel because they had Jesus, but then they killed Him, and so that kind of puts a damper on your greatness. But I want to just encourage you. I'm going to look at Deuteronomy chapter 8 in just a moment here, but I want to encourage you to just pray for your country. God can have mercy. I love the word mercy, because mercy is the opposite of what we deserve. Mercy, I've heard people say, we don't deserve your mercy. That is the word mercy. Mercy, I go to court, and I heard the story of this guy going to court back in the days when it was a little more relaxed, and this guy's brought before the judge, and he's weeping and broken, and the judge tries to calm him down and says, don't worry, you'll get justice. He says, that's what I'm concerned about. I don't want justice. I want mercy. And see, mercy is what we don't deserve. And mercy, we have a mercy. The Bible says of God, He is ever merciful. Ever merciful. And we can go to God and say, God, You've been so merciful to so many people throughout history. Would You be merciful today? Remember Abraham pleading for Sodom and Gomorrah? And if there's a place that deserved to be burning up, it was Sodom and Gomorrah. But we're not much different in America right now. And yet Abraham pled, and God said, if I could find 10 righteous, I'll spare those cities. And there was not 10 righteous. And Lot and his 2 girls barely made it out, and they made a mess of things. But you look at America today, and 600,000 or so abortions every year, and people fighting, viciously fighting for the right to murder a baby. People fighting viciously to keep this book, the Bible, out of our schools and out of our kids' hands. And people just hating God all over America. Political leaders bowing down to the pressure of a very small percentage of people who are violent and who have moral degradation. Their lifestyles are corrupt, and yet political people in leadership bowing down to these tiny little groups that are wild, crazy, and we don't deserve anything. We don't deserve God's goodness and His mercy, but that's what mercy is. Mercy is what we don't deserve. And so I can just tell you, in my mind, this country ought to be completely overrun by enemy, whether it be military or illegal immigration or whatever. It just ought to be run all over the place. We deserve we deserve to be judged by God. Our churches are complacent. Our Christians, for the vast majority, I'm going to say, don't think church is as important as kids' sports on Sunday. Church and Bible is a very sideline thing. Bibles not found in Christian homes, hardly ever read. No, we don't deserve it. We don't deserve anything but mercy. Mercy is the opposite of what we deserve. So I want to encourage you to consider just praying for your country. It doesn't matter, whatever happens on Tuesdays, up to God. What happens between now and then? No, I'm not worried about that. I am concerned about mercy. Let me just read you a couple of verses here. Remember, Moses recounting the law. He's reminding them how they got out of Egypt, because these people were not born, most of them. They were all young when they left Egypt. They had to be under 20 at the oldest. But lots of them were born in the wilderness. They wandered the wilderness for 40 years. And so the people who were at Mount Sinai and heard the law, the adults, they're all gone. So he redoes the word Deuteronomy in second law, Deuteronomy. And so he's recounting the stories and what God did and how he did it and reminding them of the laws. And so he gets over here to Deuteronomy chapter 8 and verse 5. And he says, "Thou shalt also consider in thine heart that as a man chasteneth his son, so the Lord thy God chasten thee. Therefore shalt thou keep the commandments of the Lord thy God, to walk in his way and to fear him." And he just warned them, you better fear God. You better, and I can warn America, you better fear God. You better fear God. But he goes down to verse 11, and look at this. "Beware that thou forget not the Lord thy God, in not keeping his commandments and his judgments and his statutes, which I command thee this day." Don't forget God. Verse 14. "Then thine heart be lifted up, and thou forget the Lord thy God, which brought thee forth out of the land of Egypt." So he's saying, you better not forget God. You're going to cross this Jordan River. You're going to get the land of Canaan. Don't forget God. Remember who got you here. Well, you get over to chapter 9, and you see this going on. Look, God reminds him what rebels there in verse 6. "Understand therefore that the Lord thy God giveth thee not this good land to possess it for thy righteousness, for thou art a stiff-necked people." Remember in verse 7, "And forget not how thou provokest the Lord thy God to wrath in the wilderness. From the day that thou didst depart out of the land of Egypt, until thou came to this place, ye have been rebellious against the Lord." And he says, you're a bunch of rebels. Don't you forget, I didn't pick you because you're so good. And then this wonderful thing down in verse 14, God says to Moses, "Let me alone, that I may destroy them, and blot out their name from under heaven, and I'll make of thee a nation mightier and greater." And Moses is reminding of the events that have already passed, all past tense. So Moses says, "So I turned and came down from the mount," and he said, "I came down, and verse 18, I fell down before the Lord as the first." And Moses sought desperately to have mercy on the people. Verse 26, "I prayed therefore to the Lord and said, O Lord God, destroy not thy people and thine inheritance, which thou hast redeemed through thy greatness, which thou hast brought forth out of Egypt with a mighty hand. Remember Abraham, Isaac, Jacob." And he just pleads for mercy. That's all. He just pleads for mercy. They were bad. They hadn't gotten past Mount Sinai before there was golden calves and dancing and nakedness and immorality, and it was terrible. And Moses just says, "Please don't. You're a good God. You're a merciful God. Please don't." And could I just ask you, as we enter into the weekend, pray for your church, whatever church you go to. Pray if your church doesn't have some Saturday soul winning or Thursday night soul winning, get a new church. If your church doesn't have organized soul winning, in my opinion, it's not even a biblical church. But there could be exceptions, but especially when you go around to countries where they're underground. But in America, but for you at our church, pray for Saturday soul winning. Pray that people would have open hearts to God. Pray for Sunday, that visitors would come, people would be in the baptistry. That the last week, again, week after week, people would be saved and baptized. And pray for people to make decisions for God, to honor God. And pray for our elections. Nothing wrong. Just say, God, just give us help. Give us help, God. And pray for mercy. And if you haven't voted, please vote. Go vote. Go make a decision to vote. And especially in California, I went one time without my ballot. I just said I didn't get one in the mail. And they just asked me to write my name and address down, gave me a provisional ballot. I don't know when that was, 4 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever. And but vote. And but pray. Pray for your country. Pray for mercy. Pray for the elections across the nation. So many different decisions being made. Pray. Would you do that? Pray. If Moses could pray for God's mercy on a nation that had so quickly turned, they had just come across the Red Sea, and they'd seen all the plagues on Egypt, and they'd seen the miracles, and they'd gotten down to Mount Sinai, and they literally saw the lightning and the thunder, and Moses up there, and they saw all that, and then they turned to idols and immorality. It was horrible. And Moses pled for mercy. Now, if God could be merciful to Israel, he could be merciful to America. Pray for mercy and ask his blessing, and pray for your family and your friends. But whatever God decides, it's good. You can trust him. And whatever course the days ahead come, we've got a good God. Aren't you glad there's a happily ever after? And it may be a rougher road one way than another, but we're all going to get there. If you've trusted Christ, you're safe in his hands. Everything is going to be okay. God bless you. Have a great weekend. Hope to see you in church.